Alright guys, so let's talk about BRICS and let's talk about the US today. India's President Modi just concluded his visit to the US. He met with Trump and the presser was quite bizarre. Now what's really telling is Trump's reiterating his reciprocal tariff plan on the world, and he said it in front of India. And unless India lowers their import tax, they will get punished.
Well, India's been to us just about the highest tariffed nation anywhere in the world. They've been very strong on tariffs, and I don't blame them necessarily, but it's a different way of doing business. It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. India, whatever India charges, we charge them. So, frankly, it no longer matters to us that much what they charge, because whatever they charge, I had discussions with India in the first term about the fact that their tariffs were very high, and I was unable to get a concession. So we're just going to do it the easy way, and we're just going to say whatever you charge, we charge. And I think that's fair for the people of the United States, and I think it's actually fair for India.
And it seems that India is kind of ready to make concessions to escape the tariffs. And it's important we understand the enormous pressure reciprocal tariffs have on India. They could be facing an overall increase in tariffs of 10%. That is very big and is on par with the punishments on China. Since India has tariffs on US goods, Trump wants to return the favor. And to avoid this, India is ready to make a deal. They are ready to negotiate with Trump, and this of course means buying more US LNG and oil. India buys around $15 billion worth of US energy, and they might want to raise the amount to $25 billion. As we mentioned before, the US understands Canada is going to be a serious energy competitor in the future. So Trump is making sure he seals all the deals he can during these next 4 years. So in the US perspective, this seems like a win over India, and India is part of BRICS, and that's why Trump is on a victory lap. His reciprocal tariffs are going to affect countries in the global south more than the G7. This map shows us which countries will suffer the biggest impact. Now focus on the regions in yellow and pink. We have Brazil, Argentina, large parts of Africa, India and Southeast Asia. Thanks to the reciprocal plan, they might suffer US import tariffs of at least 5% or more. Now funny enough, China is in green because US tariffs on Chinese goods are higher than Chinese tariffs on US goods coming in. So Beijing would avoid reciprocal punishments. Emerging economies in Asia, however, and BRICS in general would be clobbered hardest. They will be squeezed by the US economy. Following India's example, we can expect quite a few countries to negotiate with the US, and it's going to be a very simple process here. Either they lower their tariffs on American goods, or they get on board and they start buying expensive US oil and gas. However, Trump has taken it to the next level. When asked about BRICS, he has declared it's over, that BRICS is dead. Now, obviously, I couldn't put that word in the title, but just listen to this.
Spoken against BRICS. India is part of BRICS. Do you want to dismantle BRICS, or US want to be part of it?
I don't care, but was put there for a bad purpose. And most of those people they don't even want to talk about it now. They're afraid to talk about it because I told them if they want to play games with the dollar, then they're going to be hit with a 100% tariff the day they mention that they want to do it. And they will come back and say, we beg you not to do this. BRICS is dead since I mentioned that. BRICS died the minute I mentioned that. And I remember when Obama and Biden in particular, I guess he said that, they have us over a barrel. They don't have us over a barrel. We have them over a barrel. If BRICS wants to play games, those countries won't trade with us. We won't trade with them. And if any trading gets through, it'll be 100% tariff at least.
So you can see that Trump is supremely confident about his 100% tariff threat on BRICS. If BRICS plays games with the dollar and de-dollarizes their trade, the US will punish their exports. Now this is not the first time we heard of this, but Trump's reciprocal tariffs is likely a teaser to see how BRICS will react. Will they all cave or stand firm? Because if we look at the numbers, the US doesn't really have much leverage today. Despite the rhetoric, the US has an incredible trade record with the BRICS bloc. In 2022, trade between the US and BRICS went past $1 trillion. That's a lot of money on both sides. But as always, the devil is in the details. Now focus on the amount of imports the US buys from BRICS. They bought nearly $650 billion worth of goods from the bloc. The bulk of stuff was of course from China, but the majority of imports are industrial inputs and stuff like toys and games that end up at Walmart. So if Trump decides to impose a 100% tariff, he would be essentially declaring economic war. He would be imposing a currency crisis on BRICS, but the US economy would suffer from a bigger inflation crisis. Now, almost immediately, you'll see everything in stores double in price, plus US exports, especially in the auto industry, would be too expensive and uncompetitive. Now, in the short term, the dollar would of course strengthen and the currencies of the BRICS might collapse. Revenue would also take a significant hit, but so will the US. And this battle of attrition won't bode well for the US economy either. Now, since 1990, G7 economies have been declining in importance. Their share of global GDP peaked at 68%. During the same period, BRICS was hardly at 6%. But today, just the founding members of BRICS alone comprises 26% of the world economy. The G7 has fallen down to 43%. It tells us which economic bloc will have more production and demand power. And the US needs to trade with both to survive. Trump needs to buy cheap inputs from BRICS. US supply chains are decades behind. But he also needs growing markets to sell stuff too. The EU is in an economic crisis, let's not forget about that. They don't have the spending power to buy. So in a realistic sense, this is one threat he can't follow through with. It's very empty because, like it or not, the world will continue to de-dollarize. Using the dollar as a proxy currency just doesn't make sense anymore. Looking at the currency markets, there's a growing speculation that Trump is just bluffing. Or maybe he's not, but he will realize the truth and do a U-turn. The movement of the dollar tells us everything that we need to know. Even after Trump declared reciprocal tariffs, the USD fell by 2.5%. The market is realizing, hey, maybe Trump isn't serious about his tariff wars. Maybe this is all a big ruse to get countries to negotiate. It's a big reason why assets like gold, they have been rising over the past few months. It's why even Chinese stocks are soaring. Investors are beginning to realize that maybe Trump is just doing one big elaborate bluff, which I hope he is, because the US can't afford total economic war with BRICS. And I hope you don't think the US can win this one, guys, because it's not possible. And we can see this admission from Trump itself. It's not often you get the US finally admitting they are spending too much, especially when it comes to their military adventures. Maintaining a ton of bases and troops plus funding Ukraine is very expensive. And that's why we have Trump himself asking Russia and China to de-escalate the security competition.
We have the greatest military equipment in the world. We're building it. At some point, when things settle down, I'm going to meet with China and I'm going to meet with Russia in particular, those two. And I'm going to say, there's no reason for us to be spending almost $1 trillion on military. There's no reason for you to be spending $400 billion. China's going to be at 400 billion. We're at $1 trillion. We're going to be at close to $1 trillion. And I'm going to say, we can settle this on, we can spend this on other things. We don't have to spend this on military and I'm going to be meeting with China. You know, we were trying to.
Now the plan is simple, but it's extremely radical. Trump wants the US, China and Russia to all cut their military budget in half. Now make no mistake, the US still wants to be world hegemon. But spending too much on defense is clearly an extreme burden on the US economy. And if you didn't know by now, the US spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined. In 2022, their defense budget hit an incredible $877 billion. That's more than 3 times the defense spending of China, which has a bigger industrial economy. If you want to know why US supply chains are so underbuilt and why healthcare is in shambles, here's why. US domestic infrastructure is crumbling because too much money is spent on the military. Trump wants to revive America's industrial base, which is good for the US, but he can't do it while fighting endless wars and providing the Western world with defense under the security umbrella. So he's trying to convince Russia and China not to build up their militaries. And this will help the US save a ton of money that can be diverted to industrial growth. Now, there's a reason why Trump wants to pull out of Europe. The US contributes the lion's share of defense spending in NATO. Germany, France, and Italy, their combined spend only amounts to $150 billion. The US is nearly 6 times of that, coming in at $860 billion. That's a lot of money. It's almost half of last year's defense budget. But here's the problem. The last 4 years have seen the US confronting Russia and China non-stop. And now that they have the advantage, I find it hard for China or Russia to stop building their defense. And if that will happen to you, you can expect Moscow and Beijing to sit down and ask for more concessions. Halting their progress isn't really feasible. It isn't really the smartest move because Trump won't be in office forever. There are a lot of moving parts in the US deep state, especially when it comes to the military industrial complex. They don't want US government defense spending to drop. It's their bread and butter. The US Defense Secretary himself wants defense spending to grow, despite Trump and Musk wanting to cut spending. He wants a bigger military buildup. So there's a lot of issues within Washington itself. It's clear as day that there are still competing factions within the Trump administration. Now, according to the Chinese response, Beijing is willing, but they aren't stupid. They reminded Trump of how crazy US defense spending is. In 2025, it will reach nearly $900 billion, and that's around 40% of global military expenditure. And since the US advocates America first, then the US should take the lead by cutting their budget first. It's hilarious, but we can tell China is being extremely cautious. They don't want to be caught up on the back foot because when you lower military spending, at least for China, it also means setting back your tech progress. A lot of breakthroughs in the civilian industry also relies on government money to fund as well. Even if Trump is serious, China just doesn't believe him 100%. However, he has to do it. He has to find a way to claw back US deficit spending because it's simply unsustainable. It's going to be impossible to fight an economic war with BRICS without a ton of money to rebuild your supply chains, and good luck trying to issue more bonds to raise the money. There's a tsunami of supply, but not enough buyers. Over the last 4 months, the US budget deficit has hit an incredible $840 billion, and in January alone, this amount grew by $129 billion. The gap has widened by an insane 25%. And here's the crazy part. This is even before Trump confirmed his tariff war on the world. That's also before his tax cuts comes into effect. Imagine the trillions that have to be borrowed as revenue drops. Borrowing money from the world isn't a sustainable situation. Trump knows that, and everyone by now with an inkling of thought understands this as well. The US is officially caught between a rock and a hard place. But let me know what you think. Is Trump just blustering over tariffing BRICS? And will China or Russia cut defense spending for the US? Let me know in the comments below. Stay safe. Be sure to smash the like button and subscribe as we navigate through these crazy times.